An intriguing game on Saturday night. Two teams maybe going in opposite directions. It's the Thursday crossover.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Locked On Lions and Locked On Broncos on the Thursday crossover, brought to you by PrizePicks. Matt Dery, your host of Locked On Lions. Sayre Bedinger from Locked On Broncos. What an intriguing and interesting game this is going to be on Saturday night. Earlier in the year, Denver started off 1-5. This looked like be a nice, easy home date for the Lions, but instead, it is not going to be. This should be a very exciting game, and certainly Dan Campbell against his mentor, Sean Payton. Thursday crossover brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Sayre in Denver, me here in Detroit. Brother, this is definitely intriguing. How excited are you for primetime Broncos? And man, what's 6 out of 7 meant for your show?
Yeah, it's been an incredible couple of months as far as where, like you said, where things started for this team, kind of expecting it to be early NFL draft talk, early free agency talk. You know, was Sean Payton the right hire? Was he worth a first round pick in that trade that they made with the New Orleans Saints? And now obviously we've seen really the impact that he's been able to make on this organization as a whole, on the roster, on player development. We've seen the staff that he brought in. You know, the injury report is short almost every week at this point, which, I mean, I guess, you know, they say when it rains, it pours. I guess whatever the opposite of that is happening for the Denver Broncos lately with Sean Payton. It kind of just feels like everything he touches turns to gold a little bit. And so now they've won 6 out of their last 7 games. I think a big storyline going into this matchup against Detroit in prime time is going to be, can you keep those playoff hopes alive? Because there's just a huge mess of 7-6 and 8-5 team there in the AFC right now. Can you differentiate yourself? Can you complete this? You know, this would be the first time in maybe ever the Broncos had a 3-game road trip to go 2-1 or better on a 3-game road trip. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's been putting this team in position to do this season that the franchise has never done before or hasn't done in a really long time.
We thank everybody for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, check out Sayre in the Locked On Broncos show on their YouTube channel. Same here for Locked On Lions. Storyline that's interesting for Denver. Here in Detroit, it's kind of the opposite. Not saying everybody's panicking, not saying everybody's saying season's over, but we've hit a point now over the last 4 or 5 weeks where the Lions aren't the Lions from the start of the year. This is a team that went into Kansas City and handled the Chiefs, pushed them around a little bit, went into Green Bay, was physical, pushed them around, finished games with that running game, played physical, was off to an 8-2 start for the first time since the early 60s. Now, all of a sudden, since then, 1-2, probably squeaked by a Charger team they shouldn't have squeaked by, had to come back to beat the Bears before Thanksgiving. At home after being down double digits, unacceptable, even though they won. So now people are saying, is this the game, Sayre, Saturday night for the Lions, that we get to see what the Lions at the start of the year look like? The team that everybody was crowning as NFC North champions in October. Are they going to get back to playing a cleaner, better brand of football? They've been turning the ball over like crazy lately. Goff, over his last 4 games, I think it's 9 turnovers. You know, you guys are a big takeaway team. This is an intriguing, I keep saying intriguing, but this is the perfect time for the Lions to play the Broncos. And I think it might be a good time for Denver to be playing Detroit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think these two teams match up really interestingly because the Broncos have been susceptible on the ground this year. So if Detroit's looking to get right or get another dominant performance on the ground, this could be the team to do it against. And the Broncos on the other side are looking at it as, yeah, the Lions have turned the ball over 10 times the last 3 games. That's kind of been the formula for success for Denver lately, is creating those turnovers. Broncos have really excelled at stopping teams that try to go for it on fourth down. I know that's another area that Detroit is very, very aggressive. So it does just feel like, as you said, an intriguing matchup in so many different ways. Of course, there's the master and the apprentice storyline between Sean Payton and Dan Campbell. I've heard Dan Campbell and other players like Alex Anzalone, who played for Sean in New Orleans, they've talked about that. They've talked about the mentality that Payton, they expect him to bring into this game. It's just although these two teams, they only face each other once every 4 years, it's kind of crazy too to think about. Both of these teams are going for a sweep against the other conference, right? The Broncos against the North and the Lions against the AFC West. But also, this is the first time these two teams have matched up against each other with winning records, which is bizarre to me to think about. Wow. Normally, the discussion is, hey, one team's got to fight for draft positioning, or both teams fighting for draft positioning at this point in the season. But hey, for these two teams to be coming together with actual stuff on the line is really cool.
Another storyline is the Lions, and I'm going to talk about this too in the matchups, but the inability to stop a running quarterback. And look, this is not Russell Wilson from 10 years ago. We know that. You know that better than anybody. You watch every game, but I'm going to be interested in watching how the Lions adapt defensively. This has been a defense that showed improvement earlier in the year, but again, last 4 or 5 weeks, we're handed a 21-0 lead against the Saints a couple of weeks ago, had to hang on. They've given up over 26 points now in 5 straight games, which is completely unacceptable. The Bears, of all teams last week, handled them at the line of scrimmage at times. Chicago gets the opening kick, comes right down the field. They did that earlier in the year at Ford Field. Packers did that on Thanksgiving Day. So Chargers, 5 straight possessions a couple of weeks ago with touchdowns. So the Lions have got to clean some things up defensively. There's talent there. There's guys like Aiden Hutchinson. You mentioned Anzalone's having a really good year. But it kind of adds to the intrigue here because I know the Broncos offense, Sayre's looked better as of late, right?
Yeah, they've been putting some things together, some of those shot plays. The consistency for that offense just hasn't been there, which is another huge storyline in this game, as it has been every week. It's, they've come through in the clutch. Russell Wilson is making some throws with a high degree of difficulty, but it's the seemingly the easy stuff, the hitches and the drags and the curls and the slants and things like that. That's like, where's the consistent passing attack for this Denver offense? And because they don't have that, they're not really consistently able to commit to the running game. They kind of have to, you almost play like you're trailing for a lot of the game because you're fighting to get past the sticks on third down. But there's those moments during the game where you have a near 8-minute drive to close out the team last week. You have the drives before halftime where all of a sudden Samaje Perine and that 2-minute offense, they're clicking. So it's kind of a bizarre situation right now to where the offense is having success in key spots, but consistently over the course of games, Broncos fans are constantly wanting to see more and more from especially a Sean Payton coach team.
All right, coming up next, Sayre and I will talk about what matchups are intriguing. Man, I just keep saying the word intriguing today. But what are interesting for us and what to watch for Saturday night in prime time on the NFL Network, of course, at 8:15 for the Lions and the Broncos. We'll do that. Coming up next, we're going to tell you about our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps give you the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It's pretty simple. You put that hashtag hiring frame around, you post your job on there. It really is easy and hassle-free. And thankfully with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. Do yourself a favor. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Matt and Sayre back with you, Locked On Lions, Locked On Broncos. It's a Thursday crossover brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Denver over 500 at 7-6. Lions sitting at 9-4 right now. Detroit still really comfortable leading the NFC North. And as Sayre pointed out earlier, Broncos now not just setting their sights on a playoff spot, but could win the division, Sayre, which is a little bit crazy. But give me a matchup or two that you want to watch and keep your eye on for a Saturday night.
Absolutely. No, I've watched a lot of the Detroit Lions this season. Of course, I've really been enjoying the story. Watched Hard Knocks. I mean, I've loved watching this team from afar. I know for a fact that the Broncos are going to go up against probably the best offensive line that they've played all season in this game. And I know that Detroit, they do a pretty good job both in the run game and in pass protection. And that's evidenced by the fact, I mean, they're 5th in rushing, they're 8th in third down conversion rate. Jared Goff been sacked 25 times. But Denver's pass rush lately has been key to them getting wins. So that's a matchup that I'm going to be looking very closely at. How does Vance Joseph scheme up some pass rush to get Jared Goff uncomfortable and to continue that streak that you talked about in the first segment where, hey, over the last 4 or 5 games here, Goff has really been struggling with taking care of the football. The Broncos are going to want to keep that going, and they're going to do a lot of unique things to bring the heat in this game. So that's a matchup that I'm watching going up against that offensive line, as well as just Ben Johnson as how he schemes against that pressure, right? To see what he does. How many running back screens are we going to see in this game? How many times are we going to see Sam Laporta slip out and have a screen of his own? Because in order to neutralize that pressure, right, you're going to give the Broncos certain looks that they think that they're getting, and you're going to slip guys right out from behind and try to win that way. So I'm very, very intrigued to see this Broncos pass rush. And if they're able to keep this hot streak that they're on going, they had 6 different players with a sack this past weekend against the Chargers. And Justin Herbert doesn't get sacked very often, or hasn't got sacked very often. They knocked him out of the game. So going to be really fascinating to see how Vance Joseph schemes up that pass rush.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of your matchup, and to watch, the Lions' offensive line has really not played very well the last few weeks. And like you said, I think PFF week 3, 4, or 5 had them number 1, even bypassing Philly, and said this line is clicking with Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Glasgow at right guard, and Penei Sewell. And you got a couple of guys that have been in Pro Bowls. Jonah Jackson's a Pro Bowler. Frank Ragnow's been there. Penei Sewell was there last year. But lately, that just has not been clicking. And then one of the big reasons, and I said this before last week's game, I was concerned about the Bears game, was Frank Ragnow being out. Good news is he's been back at practice this week. Just at center, he just calms everything down. And whether it's run blocking or pass blocking, they just play better when he's in that spot. But if he re-aggravates his toe, ankle, knee injury, he's had a bunch. And Glasgow, who you know very well, former Bronco, has to go back to center, and then they have to move Coyote Owoshika or Colby Sorsdahl to right guard. It's a different offensive line. Taylor Decker's coming off a game, did not play very well. Was on the injury report early in the week, the left tackle. So if they can clean that up back at home, get Goff in that rhythm. And for my matchup, it's simple. I mean, the Broncos are the worst run defense team in the league. 32. Not anything, I'm not telling you, Sayre, that you haven't seen. But it's time to get back to pounding David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs averaging, at one point the other day against the Bears, averaging 7 a carry. But because they were trailing in that game, it turned into Goff having to stand back there in the pocket and throw. I think the Lions have got to get back to running that football with Montgomery on the inside, Gibbs on the outside, wear down that Bronco defense, leave Wilson on the sidelines, and go about it that way, almost like old school Lions from September when they were pounding people on the ground.
Yeah, and I think that is a key for them in this game, and it's been something that the Broncos have had to kind of just live with. I mean, they have put together a couple better games against the run. Los Angeles didn't do much, but they really haven't had anything going in the running game this season anyway. But before that, Houston, they didn't have much success. Other than that, though, it's been a consistent stream of, hey, who's going to be running all over the Broncos this week? Is it going to be James Cook or Alexander Mattison or whoever else? And it's kind of even some of those uncharacteristic candidates like Alexander Mattison, who was struggling going into that game against Denver and then kind of had a get right game. So that's going to be the Achilles heel of this defense, that they can't allow. What's really been bothersome for them in that regard, Matt, is missed tackles, especially at the second level. I mean, you guys are getting a push. Zach Allen's getting a push. DJ Jones is getting a push. You got so many missed tackles at that second level in those games where they have struggled against the run. And I think early this season is really where the scales kind of tipped. You know, you see the Broncos statistically, defensively, they're so bad in so many categories. And that really, I mean, I wish I was joking about this. A lot of that had to do in those first 5 games where they really just got absolutely shredded by even a team like Chicago that you mentioned, kind of shredded Detroit a little bit early in that game. I mean, they got the best of the Broncos. I think they had 300, 400 yards of offense by halftime in that game. It was bad. So yeah, that run defense for Denver is a big issue. The passing attack for Denver, though, like I said, has been another issue. And going up against the Lions pass defense, that's another matchup that I'm looking at, not specifically like, a Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton versus whoever's trying to guard them, but it's more so, can the Broncos passing attack get anything going this week? It's been a real uphill battle for them. They just haven't been able to get anything clicking. Even when they do have stuff clicking, guys are dropping passes or there's penalties being called, offensive pass interference, guys making illegal contact. So it's been a real struggle for the Broncos passing game to get much going.
Sutton versus Sutton could be interesting this weekend. Cortland Sutton, now close to over 700 yards receiving, which is good for him. Has always been a solid player, but it seems like he's coming on as of late. Made that great catch in the end zone a couple of weeks ago, I know, on that kind of heave from Wilson. But Cam Sutton's been the Lions' best corner. Right now, the Lions are very discombobulated in their secondary. Kindle Vildor, who was just signed, had to play for Jerry Jacobs last week, who got benched. Tracy Walker, who's playing for the injured C.J. Gardner-Johnson, got benched last week for Ife Melifonwu. So that's going to be a big one this weekend. All right, you put Cam Sutton on Cortland Sutton and hope Cam is playing the way he played again early in the year when he was clearly the Lions' best corner. That's one to watch as well, because like you said, this Bronco offense is not the Lions' offense in terms of weapons and consistency, but Sean Payton knows, this is an offensive genius at times and has been a wizard. And I think he'll try to exploit some things that he's seen on tape the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. He will. And he's done a much better job at scheming those things up when the timing is right, right? You have the right intention behind things. It's just a matter of those players going out and executing. I mean, that game against Houston that Denver lost a couple weeks back could have been a lot different. You saw some shots being taken downfield that, hey, Cortland Sutton just dropped a pass about 50 yards downfield, and that could have changed the game. Jerry Jeudy drops a couple of passes against the Los Angeles Chargers that could have put that game well out of reach. And I think it's just at least once or twice every game, you can't help but feel like the Broncos could get something going, but somebody's failing to make a play. If it's Russell Wilson failing to see the open receiver, or the receiver dropping the pass, or the running back not going the right direction after he catches the ball to gain enough yards after the catch. It's just one thing after another. So the scheme seems to be there, like you said with Sean Payton. The intent seems to be there for he's not holding Russell Wilson back. They're not clipping the wings or anything. They're taking shots downfield and they're trying to have that vertical passing attack open up the running game a little bit. It's just a matter of getting those guys to make the plays consistently. And the only one who's doing that lately is really Cortland Sutton.
How do the Broncos win this game? How do the Lions win this game? We'll get predictions. We'll do that coming up next right here on the Thursday crossover. Locked On Lions and Locked On Broncos. How about our friends at Skylight Frames? Are you looking for a meaningful gift this holiday season? We're running out of time that your loved ones will actually use and enjoy. Seriously, holiday shopping stresses everybody out. And you're looking for that gift that whoever you're getting it for is going to love. We want to tell you a little bit about our friends at Skylight Digital Picture Frames. Finding that perfect holiday gift for your partner or spouse is a challenge every year. That is why Skylight is the touchscreen photo frame you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. It's a great gift for your loved one. You can even preload photos before the box is even opened. That way they open it up. When it's unwrapped and plugged in, your most treasured memories will appear for them. Perfect gift for everybody, grandparents, new parents, spouse, whatever. Touchscreen makes it easy as well. Swipe through photos, tap to see new photos sent, tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender. It's a delight to use every single day. We're confident you love Skylight, so we're going to offer free 120-day returns as well. It's simple. As a special limited time offer for our Locked On Lions and Locked On Broncos listeners, you get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/lockedon. Locked on Lions, Locked on Broncos. Matt Dery, Sayre Bedinger with you as we get ready for Detroit and Denver. Teacher and pupil here, Sarah. It should be interesting. You got to figure, and Dan Campbell said this early in the season. Someone asked Dan Campbell, I think it was on one of the morning shows here, man, what's going on with your buddy Sean Payton? They just gave up a 70 burger. And he said he'll have them ready. Trust me, when they come to us, they're going to be ready. They're going to be good by then. And he was right. I mean, I can only imagine what your show sounded like after the Dolphins game.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Yeah, I was getting texts from people after that game checking in, like it's like you lost a pet or something. It's like, hey, you doing all right? Are you doing okay? That was brutal. That's one of the worst things, I think, but it serves as a great kind of before and after, right, for this season, for this team. And it serves as a stark reminder of just like where this team was and what Sean Payton had to rebuild in a way. Like, yeah, the team was playing horribly at the time, but you lose a couple of bad apples. Remember the narratives at the time. I don't know how close attention you were paying, but remember Frank Clark gave back money to the Broncos to get out of there. And people are saying like, oh, he's giving them money to get out of there. It's so bad. In reality, it was the players that were stinking up the place. And I think Sean Payton recognized that. So it really is just, it's not a tale of two halves anymore at this point. That was the first 5-6 games of the year. Now we're 8 games removed, and it feels like this team has totally legitimized itself. Like Dan Campbell saw it coming. I know Deion Sanders made comments, and other coaches were like, yeah, Sean Payton, he'll figure that thing out. I'm not worried about, and he really has. So it's just been a test of patience for Broncos fans, who are one of the most impatient fan bases in the league. But now to see that it's come to fruition, I think, man, they're about ready to build Sean Payton a statue if he brings this team to the playoffs.
All right, so I'll start here. How did the Lions win? You mentioned it before. The turnovers have been a big problem lately. 3-0 last week with the Bears, and the last one was just a Goff kind of floater at the end of the game, just getting rid of the ball. But the Lions have to win the turnover battle this week, and it's so basic, and it's like, well, duh, but they can't afford with all these turnovers, and the Broncos are the best takeaway team in the league. So Lions aren't great at taking the football away either, which is interesting. And so I think for the Lions, they've got to take care of the football. We mentioned running the football before, and they got to get their crowd into it. This can't be another game where the Lions kick the football off and the other team goes down and scores with ease to start a game. Chicago did it twice. Like I said, Green Bay on Thanksgiving Day just completely deflated that balloon on Thanksgiving Day at Ford Field. Home game, under the lights. It's indoors. The lights are on at a 1:00 game. You know what I mean? Night game, dark outside as you enter the stadium. And I think the Lions have got to just, their crowd has to play a factor and bother Russell Wilson and that Bronco offense. We get the defense kind of set and into it. And those are the kind of ways I think the Lions can get this win. How do you see it for Denver?
Yeah, I think on the other side, you obviously don't want the Lions to run all over you defensively. For the Broncos, that's the key to this defense's success right now, is making sure that teams aren't able to run the ball all over you, because it sets up the strength of your defense, which is rushing the passer and playing great coverage and creating those takeaways. So if Detroit's running the ball well, they're going to be able to play ball control, limit possessions for an offense that already needs extra possessions to get ahead in games. You want to make sure that they're not running all over you. But also for the Broncos in this game, man, not only do you have to convert third downs and get down into the red zone, but once you get to the red zone, you've got to convert those opportunities into touchdowns and not field goals against a team like Detroit that's capable of, as we've seen a number of times, putting 35 plus on the board more frequently than, most teams in the NFL over the last couple of years. They are capable of exploding offensively at any given time. So if you're the Broncos, you want to make them play from behind. And like you said, some of these things are obvious, right? But at the same time, it plays into that strength, like we talked about, the pass rush for Denver. You want to make Detroit play from behind. You want to rattle Jared Goff, get him off his spot, and force him to kind of be a playmaker out there instead of staying on schedule. And that's where I think the Broncos have really excelled lately. But can they do it against this Detroit team that, like you said, needs to get back on track?
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think they do it? You think Denver keeps this going, or do you think the Lions get right at home?
I think, I always like to go into the game with the mentality of what is, I think the Broncos can win. I do think this is a winnable game for them. I think a few weeks back, you kind of circled this one as it's iffy, but with the way Detroit's played lately, you kind of feel like you have a chance to kick them while they're down a little bit if you're the Broncos. And of course, like I said, Detroit, they're capable of coming out any given week and exploding offensively. I think they can beat anybody, as we saw from game one of this season. I mean, you beat Kansas City in their house, you can do pretty much anything or beat pretty much anybody. So definitely don't think this is going to be an easy game by any means for the Broncos, but I think they can keep this heater going a little bit, and I think they can go on the road and get a win.
I really like the way Denver's playing from a physical standpoint too. When I've watched the Broncos, they're mauling people. They're hitting hard. I know Kareem Jackson hits hard in an illegal way. But regardless, you know that he's there. So I don't know. I think that is something I think Dan Campbell will tell the guys in terms of, look, if we don't come out and establish our will and play physical brand of football that we played, maybe before the Charger game, that they're going to push us around. I don't think the Lions will let that happen, but I also think that they're going to give up some points again. I know Vegas had this open as like a 3.5 point spread, and now it's up to about 5.5 some places. So somebody knows something. I'll take the Lions, but I see kind of a 31-27 game where it'll be close again, but the Lions get it done. That's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, I could see something like that to where they pull it out late. It'll be interesting to see if this game turns into a defensive battle or if it's a shootout, because the Broncos have been in a couple of both this season. They've been in some really low scoring games that they've had to kind of grit out at the end, like the Buffalo game. Then they got into shootout against a team like Chicago earlier this season. So we haven't seen much of that, though. I think if it does get to shootout status, that's where you kind of really feel like the Broncos would be at a disadvantage, because that's not really their game. They're not really the type that we can just go out there and we can put together a 2-minute scoring drive if need be. They kind of need to be more methodical. So I think if Detroit can get out to a 2-score lead quickly in this game, it could get out of hand for the Broncos if that happens.
Sayre, great to see you. Thanks so much for doing this, my friend. The Thursday crossover was a lot of fun, and have fun Saturday night.
Absolutely. You guys too.
Sayre Bedinger, the host of Locked on Broncos. Follow him on Twitter at Sayre, Bedinger. And Sayre, by the way, is Sayre. Check out his stuff on Twitter and everything that you do over at Locked on Broncos. Those guys do a great show. Matt Dery, Locked on Lions, Friday. Keys tomorrow. Both of us will have those on our subsequent shows right here. Locked on Lions and Locked on Broncos. Thursday crossover brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks.